Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Ron Harrington, back to hit you with another video. And today, we are now back into the swing of things. Our break is over, and now we're ready to get back into the stories that you all have been waiting to see. However, I do want to say before we get into today's video, as always, if you are a fan of the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is Power Core Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. Today's video is looking to be a good one, as we are going to be getting into our first story of the week, the series that will be taking the Monday slot, and that is going to be What If Deku Was Iron Man? My Hero Academia Armored Adventures, Part 1. Now, for this series in particular, I do want to say that there are a few inspirations that I am drawing from with this series. If you are familiar with the Iron Man animated series from the 90s, I am going to be pulling from that storyline in particular, mainly because I do like that series. It's a series that I grew up with as a child, and I think that's a version of Iron Man that I think would work best for this character. Now, this isn't going to be a situation where Izuku is connected to the MCU per se, but this is just going to be a situation where quirkless Izuku Midoriya essentially uses his brains, becomes a lot more smarter, and essentially takes up the role of being the Iron Man of his world, truly becoming a great hero despite not having a quirk. So that's really the idea that we're going to be playing off of this series. I am looking to take it in a bit of a different direction compared to most. While you will still have the familiar parts of My Hero Academia, there is going to be its own element to this story that I want to have to make it unique compared to everything else. Also, because Season 6 is not out at the moment, the way I'm writing this story is so that it will be independent of needing a Season 6. Basically, what I'm trying to say is when we get to the end of this series, that can be the end of the series, but if you guys want me to keep it going, then I will leave space so that I can keep the series going in the future if you guys want it to keep going. But for now, I do have a set limit on how far I want this series to go. It's going to be a 10-part series. I am going to cover the first movie. Whether I cover the second or the third, that's up to you guys if you want to see them. I don't know if movies 2 or 3 are canon. I know that number 1 is. I don't know about 2 or 3, but that's just something that we'll have to see as we go. Maybe I'll add them, maybe I won't, but that's just something that we'll just have to see going into the future, so that's something to keep in mind as well. Stay tuned for everything else we have this week, as we have other stories that are going to be introduced also, and I do have a lot of interesting projects coming out in the near future, so I hope you'll stay tuned for that as well. But anyway, without further ado, let's kick things off right this Monday as we get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. For Izuku Midoriya, this day was one of the more darker days that the young man had ever experienced. The 4-year-old sat beside his mother as a small funeral was held. The man being buried, or at least the casket being put into place, was for his father, Hisashi Midoriya. You see, Izuku never knew much about his father, about the life he lived, or about the man he was. He was always a man of secrecy, a man that kept to himself. So much so that you could hardly say that he was ever around his family to begin with. Just what his business was, or exactly what he did for a living, no one could fully say for sure. but still his death rang true all the same. While Izuku didn't know much of his father, he remembered bits and pieces of happier times. As for his mother, Inko, as she was saddened, she knew that this day would come. Unknown to her son, her husband, his father, he lived a life where death was always on the doorstep. It had only been but 3 months ago when they had spoken for the final time. He had always assured her that if anything were to ever happen to him, the family would be well taken care of. They would be protected. Of course, for Inko, she truly didn't care about any of that. She wished that she could have lived in a reality where she, her husband, and her son could live peacefully with one another. However, this was not going to be the case. As the funeral came to its conclusion, an older man would approach the two of them. His name, Jarvis Koshima, would escort the two of them to the family estate, where the reading of the will was going to take place. Once they had arrived, and everyone was gathered together, the lawyer would read out as follows. To Miss Inko Midoriya and her son, Izuku Midoriya, I leave my wealth and possessions. I also leave you with private security that will be with you for as long as you live. This was not unexpected to Inko. She had already known that this was going to be the likely outcome, but all the same, she didn't know just how much they were going to get in terms of wealth. But safe to say, they were more than taken care of, more than comfortable, to say the least. For Izuku, this was the point in his life where everything was going to change. You see, it had only been but a couple of weeks ago when the young boy had learned that he was in fact quirkless, without a special ability. Izuku Midoriya lived in a world where it seemed as though heroes that appeared in comic books and movies had now come to life. Among all of them in Japan, the number one hero, All Might, served as the symbol of peace, deterring all evil, and Izuku wanted to follow in his footsteps. But at the same time, he knew that there was something about him that was different. He couldn't fully describe it, but it was just a feeling that he had within himself. He knew he wasn't like most other kids. And now, learning that he was quirkless, he could see why. But still, that did not deter him. While there were some in his class who tried to put him down for it, mostly his friend Katsuki Bakugo, who had recently discovered his own quirk, the power to make explosions. Izuku was a lot more smarter than many people gave him credit for. He was able to see that the world was truly a fight for survival. And it was only going to be those who had the will and the strength to keep going. They would be the ones who would survive. But all the same though, with everything that was going on, learning that her son was indeed quirkless, Inko wanted to at least give her son a better life. She had always seen the potential within him. Even though he didn't have a quirk, Izuku was surprisingly good at other things. He had a very sharp mind for a boy his age, and he always seemed to be tinkering and building and doing something of some sort. As such, she believed that his talents could be used elsewhere. And with that, both she and her son would move, going to another area where Izuku could go to a school for gifted children, quirkless or not quirkless to say the least. That way, even if Izuku's hero dream didn't pan out, he would get a fine education, and who knows, he could probably contribute to society in other ways. As Izuku was leaving though, he would say goodbye to Bakugo. When Bakugo learned of Izuku's father dying, this left him with a bit of a change within himself. Even for the young hothead, he knew that picking on Izuku wasn't really the right time. And not only that, but the loss of Izuku's father had now caused for him and his mother to move away, and he wasn't sure if he would ever see his friend again. Before leaving though, as Izuku was getting ready to go into the car, young Bakugo would approach him and give him something. It was a toy of All Might, a limited edition. Young Izuku was shocked. He didn't think that Bakugo would do such a thing. However, Bakugo merely scoffed, telling him to just take the stupid toy already. Izuku knew that it must have been hard for Bakugo to express his feelings. But before leaving, he gave his friend a hug and told him that everything was going to be alright. That no matter what, he would still work to be a hero, and they would both be number one together. Bakugo would pat Izuku on the back, as both he and his mother would get into the car along with Jarvis as they drove away. Bakugo turning and walking back home with his mother, as a single tear fell down his face. Before long, Izuku would be settled in and he would enroll in his new school. Arriving there, he learned that just because he went to a new environment, things didn't always change for the better. In fact, he was still picked on in some regards for not having a quirk, but he truly didn't let it bother him at all. His grades were at the top of the class, and he showed that he truly excelled in many areas. The teachers seeing that even if he was quirkless, he was definitely a gifted prodigy to say the least, and if his mind continued to grow and expand, there was no telling what he would be capable of. During recess, Izuku would be sitting on the playground all by himself. As he did so, he would see a young girl being picked on by a couple of other boys. He walked over to them and politely asked them to stop. However, the boys would quickly turn to Izuku, telling him to butt out and to mind his own business. The young girl seemed to be very afraid. However, Izuku would continue to stand his ground. He wasn't sure what came over him at this moment. Maybe it was a fight or flight sort of response. But Izuku in that instance he knew he couldn't turn from someone in need. He stood his ground to the young boys, telling them again to leave the girl alone. And he was kindly beaten for his troubles. As he was left on the ground after the boys had had their fun, the young girl, with her hair tied into a unique ponytail, a very dark shade of black, she would help Izuku up. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm pretty used to stuff like that happening. Why were they bothering you?" "It's just because of my quirk. They're always trying to make me do stuff for them, but I really don't want to. And when I don't do what they say, they just become so mean." "That doesn't sound right at all. What's your quirk, if you don't mind me asking?" "Oh, it's a creation quirk. I can create things." "Really? That's so cool. So, like, what have you ever made?" "Oh, I make this." The young girl would make what was essentially a Russian nesting doll. They were something that she liked to collect, and she liked to make them, making them to be rather unique and special for her. "I see. So you can make these type of things? Mm-hmm. And when they found out, they always want me to try to make them toys and stuff. But I really don't know how to make them all that well, and they won't leave me alone because of it. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think that's right. You should use your quirk the way you want to, not because someone forces you to. Thanks. You're pretty nice. What's your name? Oh, I'm Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you. My name's Momo Yaoyorozu. I think we're in the same class. Oh yeah, we are. Uh, so, did you want to play? Sure. From that moment onward, a strong bond would be formed between the two children, Momo Yaoyorozu and Izuku Midoriya. As time went on, Izuku decided to take into creating, building, trying to always make some new invention of some kind, shape, or form. And Momo Yaoyorozu, she became more of his spectator / tester in many regards, often checking on her friend and seeing what new scheme he had built up next. And Izuku had a lot of things to build. At the age of 6, he was able to build a backpack that was able to work like something of a jetpack. It couldn't fly all that high or go all that fast. It hovered him up in the air, about 4 feet off the ground, and he moved at a decent pace to say the least, but still, for a young kid to be able to invent something like that was truly astounding. At the age of 8, Izuku would then take to creating rocket boots. At least that's what he tried to do. Although countless times Momo would have to use a fire extinguisher, getting to the point where she had to learn how to create one, since she never knew when Izuku may or may not blow himself up. But eventually, Izuku focused on trying to build different sort of gadgets that he believed could help people in any way, shape, and form. This being from different types of safety equipment that could help people when in a pinch, and just trying to test the limits of his mind and creativity. The more and more he continued to build, Izuku's mother would see this, and she was really proud of her son and the steps that he was taking. So much so that she would use the money that they had from their fortune to help fund her son's creations. As such, in their own private mansion of sorts, Izuku was given his own laboratory, a place where he was allowed to build and test things out. Of course, the laboratory was on the property of his family's home, and he had to make sure to keep it at a safe distance so as not to blow up the house. And many fires were started on his part, but thankfully he always had some help from his robotic assistants helping to put out the flames. Technology had become much advanced in the world that they lived in, so for Izuku to be able to build and create these different things, it was more than what he could have ever dreamed of. Eventually the time came where the children were exiting out of middle school and preparing for their lives in junior high. Even still, Izuku's dream of being a hero had never died, and it had never changed. As he was approaching his 15th birthday, there was something that was going to be given to him. Something that was going to change his life forever. When the day of his 15th birthday came, Izuku, his mother, their assistant, Jarvis, Momo, and her family will all arrive to the Izuku residence, where they would enjoy Izuku's birthday, exchanging gifts and enjoying the atmosphere. There was one gift, though, that was mailed specifically for Izuku. It had no name, and it was anonymous, really. A box that could only be opened by a key that was attached. Izuku wasn't sure of what it was, but he figured he'd open it on his spare time. The party went on as normal, and both Momo's parents and Izuku's mother would be talking about their children and how well they were doing. Inko would learn that Momo was getting a recommendation to go to UA, and that if Izuku wanted, he could go in the support course after all. With his mind and intellect and his know-how for building things, that was definitely an area where he could be useful. Inko liked the idea, but she wanted Izuku to keep his options open. He still had not given up on his dream of being a hero, but all the same, she knew that she wanted her son to be as safe as possible. And trying to be a hero without a quirk, well, that was easier said than done. All the same though, the party would go off rather well. Izuku and Momo just hanging about as they normally did, standing on the back patio looking up at the night sky above. The two of them talking about their plans for the future. Momo would say that she was going to UA and that thankfully she had gotten in on a letter of recommendation, and that if he wanted to, she could have her parents write him one as well. The two families had gotten along with one another greatly over the last 10 years, and they had come to view Izuku as family as well. If anything, they wouldn't hesitate to help in any situation, and they were more than willing to do so. However, Izuku would turn her down. He had his own plans of getting into UA as well since he applied, and he was going to do so on his own strength, to show what he could truly do. But before that, there was actually something he wanted to show her. After going back inside, he would tell them all that they were going to his laboratory, and that they would be back in a little while. Once allowing everyone to know where they were going ahead of time, Izuku and Momo would race across the yard itself until eventually they arrived to the small little shed that had been built, about 100 to 200 feet away from the mansion. Behind the shed there was a large concrete pad that had been marked and scarred with various forms of flame and heat. As they went inside, Momo would see the familiar laboratory she had come accustomed to for all these years. All of Izuku's inventions, schematics, and schemes built all over. And there was something large covered in a blue tarp at the far end of the room. As they made their way, Izuku would reveal what he had been working on for so long. As he uncovered the tarp, Momo wondered what she was going to see, believing she was going to be in for a surprise. And indeed she was. As Izuku uncovered the tarp, what would be revealed would be something that she never would have expected. Under it would be a large metal suit. Momo would stare at it in awe for some time. The suit was about the same height as Izuku, give or take a few more feet. It was large and gray, a bit bulky and clunky in every way, shape, and form. To say that the suit was entirely metal would be a bit of an understatement. It was a chest plate, a helmet, gauntlets, and rocket boots respectively, all connected with an ectoskeleton. It wasn't a complete suit, but it was something that was still in creation. Momo would ask Izuku just what it was and what exactly he was planning on doing. Izuku explained that, after thinking it over for a bit, he wondered if he could still be a hero. And if he was, how was he going to do so? After thinking about it for a moment, he remembered when they were little, the fairy tale books they used to read, about knights in shining armor that would save the princess and fight off various monsters and dragons and such. And the more he thought about it, he figured a knight's armor could be a great asset. And after applying it to himself, this was what he came up with. Of course, he wasn't sure of what to call it at the moment. Momo was actually impressed that Izuku had come up with something like this. The idea for a suit of armor for quirkless heroes. That was something that not a lot of people utilize in this world. And if Izuku could master it over time, there was no telling what he could do. Of course, she would ask him what his name would be if he were to be a hero, and Izuku still hadn't come up with one in the meantime. That's when Momo would say, it was like a man made out of iron. Like an Iron Man. Izuku would correct her and say that it was actually made of a titanium alloy and such, and note the other metals that went into its creations, but Momo would still remark that it was Iron Man. Iron Man sounded like a good name. It sounded strong, reliable, dependable. Why not Iron Man? Izuku tried to come up with a better name, and he had several in the pot, but seeing Momo's face light up at the idea of being Iron Man, Izuku decided to go along with it. And he decided, why not? This would be Iron Man, Mark 1. With that, she would ask if this was what he was going to use for the UA entrance exam, and he remarked that this was going to be the case. She then asked how he was going to be able to get it to school, and that was when he would show off the invention's next great function. After pressing a button, the suit would fold in on itself until it became something like a giant backpack. Izuku would try to pick it up and put it on his shoulders, and he was able to walk about 5 to 10 feet before he fell over. The suit was a bit heavy at the moment. After putting it on a weight scale and seeing how much it weighed, it was about 150 pounds altogether. And Momo remarked that even though the suit might be functional, it was still going to be hard for him to carry it at all times. That's when Izuku explained that that was the reason why this was still the prototype. For now, he couldn't have armor covering his whole body. He would only have the rocket boots, the gauntlets, the chest plate, and the helmet, all of it being connected through an ectoskeleton. So his upper legs and his upper arms and his lower body would still be exposed. Although for that, he had a Kevlar bodysuit that he would wear. That way it would give him some layer of protection in the meantime. But with that, he knew that he was going to need to work on his physical strength as well as his mental. And that's when Momo suggested that he should try working out with her. She had her various workouts and regimens that she went through, and since they had about 10 months before the exams took place, that would be more than enough time to get Izuku into shape, to build him up so that he could be strong enough to carry his armor in the meantime, until he could find a better way to compact it. While Izuku would be working on his armors and building everything up, he agreed, and that was what they were going to work on. Eventually, they would return back to the party, and after socializing for a bit, everyone would go home respectively, and Izuku was preparing to turn into bed, when he remembered the box. After taking it out and carefully examining it, he would take the key and open it. When he did so, he would see a CD, as well as a ring. The ring was of elegant design, emerald in color. After examining it, Izuku would place it on his finger. The moment he did so, the emerald ring would start to glow, and he could feel a tremendous amount of power welling up inside of him. Izuku became a bit worried in that moment and quickly took the ring off, as he carefully examined the CD inside. The only thing the disc would have written on it was Son. Making sure that both Jarvis and his mother were sound asleep, Izuku would go to his desk. Going to the computer, he would place the CD inside, and from there a video would play, with it being none other than his father. Izuku, if you're watching this, it means you've made it to your 15th birthday. Happy birthday, my son. This is going to be a lot for you to take in, and I don't expect you to understand it all. But recently it's come to my attention that you found out you were quirkless. I do give you my deepest apologies. I know that being a hero is something you've always aspired to be, and I have no doubt that you will one day obtain that dream of yours. But there's a lot more that I feel you should know. You see, the reason why I haven't been able to be home with you, with your mother, as much as I've always wanted to be originally, well, it's because I'm involved in something that I can't have you being dragged into. If I can avoid it possible, I want to, but there's no telling how long that will be. I am a part of an organization, an ancient one that has existed long since before the time of quirks. We are known as the 10 Elder Stars. A long time ago, a meteorite containing 10 unique crystals came to Earth. When it crashed, the 10 crystals each had a unique power within them. They were broken down into tiny jewels, placed inside of a special metal ring created from the crust of the meteorite they came in. That is the ring that is in the box. These rings became known as the 10 Makuan rings. As such, an organization known as the 10 Elder Stars were created. 10 extraordinary individuals. Each would take a ring for themselves, and they would guard and keep it safe, not allowing it to fall into the wrong hands. However, there is a group led by one man in particular, one who for centuries has tried to get his hands on the rings. We do not know what his true name is, but we only know his title. They call him the Mandarin. Throughout history, the Mandarin has attempted to take all 10 rings for himself, and the few times that he has, it has led to the world's destruction. Only through the acts of the brave heroes of the 10 Elder Stars and others who have risen to face the Mandarin have ever been able to stop him in his schemes. The ring inside of the box that I have given you, the Emerald Stone, is one of the 10 rings. It is the ring of power, able to emit a strong source of energy. I am passing it down to you so that you may keep it safe. In time, I believe that the Mandarin will rise again. That is why I am leaving this in your care. Because if you are watching this video, it means that I have failed, and I have most likely been killed. The Mandarin has his own organization. They are known as the 10 Shadows. The 10 Shadows have always been in collusion against the 10 Elder Stars. The two sides fight for the rings, one side to protect them, and the other side to use them for evil. The 10 Shadows are 10 special individuals who the Mandarin employs. They are given the specific order to hunt down the rings at all cost. The reason why I am telling you this is so that you can protect the ring. I know that with your intellect, you will know what is best to do with it. And I believe you can become a great hero. So please use this power. Keep it safe and keep it hidden. I believe and trust that you can do this. And no matter what happens, I will always be proud of you, my son. As the video ended, Izuku, his eyes would be welling up with tears as he looked down at the ring he was holding, a vestige of the power that his father had given him. He knew now more than ever that he had to continue on his path of being a hero, and that now he had another tool to add to his arsenal. Izuku would keep the ring safely with him. As he would wear it, he would simply tell everyone that it was something that he got as a gift, and it was something that he would keep close to himself. Wearing the ring, Izuku was able to feel the power flowing within him. A power so much so that he was actually able to carry his suit of armor. What was originally heavy for him, now it didn't seem all that much. Just because he had the ring though, it didn't mean that he wasn't going to stop using his armor. If anything, by combining the power of the green ring along with the power of his armors, there was no telling what he could be capable of. And now more than ever he knew his mission, not just in becoming a hero, but by keeping the ring safe. He would begin his workout regimen with Momo Yaoyorozu. The two of them would go jogging together in the mornings and doing some light muscle training in the afternoons, as well as doing yoga and getting limber in many other regards. Before long, Izuku would become well built. Whenever he wasn't doing training with Momo, he would practice with the ring, testing its power and seeing what it was capable of. The energy source of the ring he felt would be a great battery for his overall power. After combining his technology and the ring together, he was able to create something even greater than before. Something that could possibly revolutionize technology for all mankind. He called it the Arc Reactor, a small, powerful source of energy that would be the center plate of his suit. Supercharged by the ring that he would wear his ectoskeleton suit-like armor, now seeing and testing its limits, knowing what he was truly capable of. Eventually, time would pass, and the day of the entrance exam would begin. Izuku, after waking up and having a nice breakfast, would be driven to UA by his assistant Jarvis. As they were making their way, his mother would wish him good luck, and telling him that no matter what, she was proud of him. Izuku would take this and keep it in mind as he made his way to UA, carrying his now smaller, much more compact backpack on his shoulders. He would make his way to the entrance hall. However, before going, he would be stopped as he saw someone standing outside. It was Momo. She had come there to wish him good luck in person. Of course, she had already gotten in via a letter of recommendation, so there wasn't really much for her to worry about in that regard. But all the same, she still knew that Izuku had worked more than hard to get there, and that if anyone was capable of doing it, it was him. As he made his way inside, she would give him one kiss on the cheek for good luck. And as he was preparing to enter, he would bump into a boy who would apologize. Izuku would assure him that everything was fine, and the young man, with short, dark hair, would tell him that was an interesting ring he had there. Izuku would wonder if this were a sign. However, the boy seemed to be harmless all in all, and it just seemed to take note of the ring that he had. Izuku would tell him that it was simply a gift. As they were speaking though, Izuku would see that the boy had a ring of his own. It was a fiery red in nature. If Izuku didn't know any better, he would have sworn that the ring was built a lot like his own. But as quickly as he came to that realization, the boy, strangely enough, disappeared. With that, Izuku would just continue walking on inside when he would hear another voice behind him. As he turned, he would see that it was none other than his old friend, Katsuki Bakugo, as the ringing of Deku could be heard all throughout the front. Bakugo racing towards Izuku to see him, to see what had happened, and just to see how much he had grown. He couldn't believe that this was the same sniveling Deku that he knew as a little kid. And what's more so, he had some strange metal backpack on his shoulders. He would ask him what he was doing here, if he had gained a quirk somehow, but Izuku would explain that no, he was still quirkless, but rather, he had developed his own way of being a hero, and now was the chance to show it off and to show what he could do. While on the inside, Bakugo was happy to see that Izuku was doing well, at the same time, though, his rivalry and competitive edge was still getting the best of him, and as such, he would boldly declare that no matter what Izuku was able to cook up, in the end, he was still going to be number one. And the two of them would merely bump fists as they made their way for the entrance exam to begin. The first portion would be a written exam. Izuku was able to fly through it with ease, as the questions really weren't all that difficult, and with all of the studying that he had had to do in the meantime, it was more than a piece of cake for him. Eventually, then would come the physical portion of the exam. As everyone was split off into different sections, Izuku would walk in with his tracksuit on and his metal backpack close to him. He had already got registered since the staff were already aware of his situation, and to say that they were intrigued would be a bit of an understatement. They had known from his school and from the grades he got that he excelled in every level. If he wanted to go to UA on general studies or in the hero support course, he could have easily have gotten in. But he wanted to go through the hero course. And even more so, he apparently had something built that could allow him to compete with heroes. Now this was something that they had to see. As Izuku would press a button, his backpack would begin to unmorph and change, as tendrils of metal would rush down his arms and legs. His armored chest plate would appear, as he would don his rocket boots, as well as his 2 wrist gauntlets, before a metal helmet would engulf his entire head. This was the Mark I. It was a simple basic armor. Despite the rocket boots, they could only boost him up in the air for a brief moment, but they couldn't maintain flight all throughout, since this was still a work in progress. All the same, as the announcement for the start of the exam would begin, Izuku would see what they had to deal with. They would be fighting robots of various size and shape, each one having a different amount of points garnered based on the number of robots that were defeated. As Izuku raced forward ahead of everyone else, the people would see the young boy in the metal armor, seeing what he was able to do, and they were definitely impressed to say the least, as beams of green energy would shoot out of his palms, blasting away at the head of the robots as he tore apart their legs and arms at various joints, boosting himself into the air and delivering a strong and powerful punch. Izuku was making good progress with his armor. With the power of the ring at his disposal, he was able to supercharge his attacks even further, delivering a bit more of a devastating hit to the overall attack. In a sense, boosting his armor even greater than he could originally. Of course, Izuku always tried to keep a balance between using the ring and using his armor, making sure never to become too reliant on one over the other, but to always keep everything balanced and within perspective. You could say that the ring was sort of a last resort. If, in the worst case scenario, his armor were to just stop working and he had nothing at all, at the very least he would have the power of the ring to use. And while using the armor, he could enhance its power by using the ring, giving it more power if it needed so, always making sure not to overpush the limit, as the suit could potentially break down on him. He was making good progress and racing through the arena, destroying the various robots at different points, while Bakugo in his arena was doing the same as well. But there was someone else who was also catching everyone's attention. The young boy with dark hair, who seemed to be employing a special form of martial arts, and being boosted by a fire that seemed to form in his fist. He would be punching away with his flaming fury at the robots, as they were all about to be surrounded by the 1-0 pointer, a large robotic structure that was seemingly crushing everything in its path. Both Izuku and the dark-haired boy would see a young girl in distress, as she was trapped under some rubble. The two of them would move instantly, Izuku to the left and the young boy to the right. Izuku, using his robotic suit, would lift the rubble and get the girl to safety. After the dark-haired boy had helped them escape, he would turn back his attention towards the 0 pointer. As he ran up the legs and the shoulder joints of the robotic being, he would take out a bow staff and would start to hack away at it over and over again, causing it to break down, until eventually he jumped into front of its face and delivered a flame-induced punch, knocking it down to the ground instantly. Everyone in the crowd was absolutely stunned at what they were seeing. To see these two and to know what they were capable of. A boy using a suit of armor, and another one who was like a fire martial artist of some kind. Izuku, although, he was definitely intrigued by the young man, just wondering who he was and what he was capable of for the most part. Eventually, the time on the exam would be over, and Recovery Girl would come out and help heal anyone who was injured. Izuku wasn't worried about points or anything like that. He believed he'd done fairly well. But that boy had definitely caught his attention. But when he tried to find him, he was gone. As the day came to an end, Izuku would leave and go back home. He would give Momo a call on the phone and tell her everything that happened, and she was happy for him, believing that if he had done so well, he was definitely going to get in. In the time leading up to the announcement of those who would be accepted into UA, Izuku continued to toy and to tinker with his suit overall, eventually deciding that he had to come up with a better way to use his suits altogether. And that's when he had one idea. After seeing that there was the use of a metallic type of fabric, he decided to make a suit that would be a lot more sleeker in design. It would start with a red chest plate, with red boots and red gauntlets. They were a lot more compact and easier to carry. However, a special feature that they had was that at the legs and the arms, there would be a yellow metallic type of fabric that would extend, connecting the wrist gauntlets to the chest plate and connecting the lower rocket boots and that leg structure all the way up to his hips. He would also have a secondary under armor that would hold everything together. And finally, a red helmet with a yellow face trim. For those wondering, this would be the iconic Iron Man armor, the Model 3 if you will. Izuku now having something that was a lot simpler and easier to work with, and something that could be packed up and shipped off, he would have the final schematics put into place before having them submit it in when needed. Before long, his letter of recommendation would eventually arrive from UA, with All Might of all people telling Izuku that he had performed extremely well during the exams, not just in terms of his smarts, but also in his ingenuity. They wanted bright minds like his to be the forefront for hero armor going into the future, and as such, he was welcomed into the Hero Academia. Izuku would be extremely proud and happy for himself, as he would give Momo a call on the phone, telling her of everything that had happened, and she was happy for him as well. Before long, his uniform would come in the mail, and Izuku was on his way to school, now a part of UA High, and now stepping forward in his goals to become the greatest hero of all time. As he arrived, he would see many other students in his class, all colorful and unique in their own ways. There were 21 of them in total, the 21st being the boy that he had saw that day, the boy with the dark hair and with the red ring. They would make eye contact with one another, but they said nothing, as the teacher, Mr. Aizawa, or as Izuku would know him as, Eraserhead, since he had done his studying of various heroes, would make his presence known, and would announce that they were going to be taking a quirk apprehension test, to truly see who did and didn't deserve to be in the class. This was going to be where they would have to use their skills, and for the most part, they were going to have to show what they could do with their quirks for the most part. As for Izuku, using the power of the ring, he was able to enhance his body just enough to the point where he could perform well on a few of the tests given. Izuku would explain that he had another type of technology, if you will, something that could allow him to compete without using his full armor. And since he was indeed quirkless, Mr. Aizawa would allow it. This was safely the best explanation he could use, to show off using the power ring without any worry or suspicion. Although he would have preferred not to do so, he knew he had to give an explanation for how he was doing the things he was able to do. The ring in and of itself didn't enhance his body to a great amount, but it did so just enough for, with things like the grip strength, as well as the ball throw, he was able to do decently well. Although of course, for those with quirks, they ended up doing a lot better than him, but he wasn't too far behind. The power of the ring alone was actually able to keep Izuku relatively in middle of the pack. It actually made Mr. Aizawa wonder what would have happened if he had allowed him to use his armor. But this was a nice gauge to see what he could do. Ultimately, the last student to come in place would be one by the name of Minoru Mineta. As such, he would be taken out of the class and moved to general studies, leaving it to an even number of 20. As everyone else was testing and seeing what they could do, one of the students in the upper position was the boy that Izuku had been wondering about. From what everyone could see, he seemed to use a fire-type quirk of some sort. Of course, Izuku knew better. He could wonder if it was really a fire quirk, or if it was something else. All the same, their first day was done. Mr. Aizawa would give them an impassioned speech about what he wanted from them, to go beyond, to go plus ultra. And the students were now reinvigorated to do and give it their very best. As Izuku was preparing to walk home, with Momo close behind him, since the two of them had wanted to catch up for a bit, they would be stopped by two more students who would come behind them. A young girl named Ochako Uraraka, and a taller boy with glasses named Tenya Ida. Ida would be extremely impressed with Izuku Midoriya, seeing how he was able to do the things that he did without a quirk. And Uraraka Since she had made friends with Ida earlier in the day and was walking with him back home to the train station, she wanted to introduce herself as well, since she thought what Izuku could do was really cool. As the four would make their way, slowly talking and conversing with one another, they would be stopped by that strange boy, the boy with the dark hair. He would say hello to everyone before turning his attention to Izuku, as he wanted to speak to him privately for that moment. Izuku would put on a friendly face. Momo was a bit worried, but Izuku assured her that everything was fine, and that he had actually been wanting to talk to him as well. Momo promised that she would wait at the station for him as they moved on ahead. Once they were out of earshot, the young boy and Izuku would then give each other a rather serious look. "Wow, you look like you don't trust me very much. Forgive me, but they don't know what I do, and I'd like to keep it that way." "Is that so?" "Well, I can understand for the most part. The less people that know, the better." "So, I take it I can understand why you're here?" "Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you about that ring on your finger." "Funny. I could ask you the same thing about yours, Izuku." "So you know what this is then?" "I do. Then I must ask, are you a shadow or are you a star?" "Star, obviously." Izuku would feel a little relieved. It seemed as though the boy in front of him understood what he was trying to say, so at the very least they knew they were on the same page in that regard. "My name is Izuku Midoriya. May I ask yours?" "Most people call me Sean, although, for those who know who I really am, I go by Shang-Chi." "And I take it that ring of yours." "Yeah? It's one of the 10 Makuan rings. Fire. And you have the power ring." "So what exactly are you doing here then, Sean?" "Well, I figure it'd be pretty obvious, but I figure we should just skip the formalities and just get straight to the point. I was sent here by my mother from China. I'm trying to find where the other 10 rings might be." "And why would you be after all 10 rings?" "Because I'm looking to stop the Mandarin from getting them." "The Mandarin? You know of him?" "Know him? He helped give birth to me after all." "You're the son of the Mandarin?" Izuku would ask, now becoming a bit more concerned, not sure if the man in front of him was friend or foe. "Yes, he is my father, but me and my mother do not have ties to him. Also, if you're wondering, the Mandarin isn't what you think it is. It's a title more so than anything else that's been in my family for generations now. My father is the 9th Mandarin of his generation. I could have had the potential to be the 10th, but I turned it down. My mother wants no part of him, and we've been on the run ever since. She gave me this ring after training me, and now I know that I need to keep it safe at all costs. I came here to UA because I wasn't sure of what I might find here in Japan, and this is a good school after all. I never thought that I'd run into you as well. So how did you get your ring?" "I got it from my father. It was a gift that I received recently, but he died." "I see. I'm sorry. It's okay. You weren't responsible for it." "No, but my father was." and I cannot let his crimes go unpunished. I'm here to train and get stronger, to get as strong as I can. I know that right now I'm not strong enough, but I want to be able to defeat my father and put an end to his schemes once and for all, destroying him and the 10 Shadows. Izuku would look to Shang as the two stepped forward to one another, both being kindred spirits in a way, now knowing that they had their own destiny, their own road that they would have to walk down. Bearers of 2 of the 10 Makuan rings, their fate almost being inscribed from the day they were born. The two would shake hands with one another as the sun began to set, this being the sign of their vow. The journey that they were going to walk down, they would make many friends along the way. But along with those friends, there would also be enemies as well. This is the story of Izuku Midoriya, the boy that was born without a quirk. But yet even still, this boy will go on to become the greatest hero that the world has ever seen. This concludes What If Deku Was Iron Man? My Hero Academia Armored Adventures Part 1. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have on the channel, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting, so that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we are going to be continuing What If Naruto Was Trained by Dr. Strange? Naruto Shippuden Mystic Adventures Part 1. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.